something is taking place.
Gotten only by militancy.
A lot of white people did not want black people as their neighbors.
Asian, West Indian, and Black British stand firm in England.
There's Malcolm.
Is he walking around Birmingham?
Yeah, Smethwick in Birmingham.
Smethwick,
Yeah.
I see.
Be militant. Can't be conservative or moderate today.
There's Angela.
Angela Davis, yes.
The black community as a whole. Brothers and sisters, this is genocide.
These were all great movements for us at the time. This is really our inspiration.
Black power, what does it really mean? The coming together of black people to fight for their liberation by any means necessary.
They articulated all our desires, all our dreams, all our feelings, and that's why we were attracted to them. There was a lot of hostility to immigrants and immigration.
Some organizations would like to see all colored people sent back to their home countries.
Keep Britain, Britain, keep it white as it should be.
Even when I went to school, you would hear it in the classroom. Miss, this isn't fair. Why are all these immigrants coming here? They're coming to take my dad's job, etc.
There won't be enough houses and jobs to go around.
The white person should have them houses first.
My mother was English and I was surrounded really by white people. So I was quite isolated and lonely.
I came to Britain on a scholarship to Cambridge University. It was when I came to London looking for a room to stay that I suddenly got a jolt. They really did say, we don't want you here.
A lot of white people did not want black people as their neighbors, and they certainly didn't want them in their houses.
Apart from facing this kind of racism from landlords, one would go to pubs and they would pretend that you were not there, that you were an invisible person.
Serious clashes between the police and immigrants, highlighting the growing conflict between the two up and down the country.
The policing of black communities was very, very brutal. We, as we grew up, began to resist and want better for ourselves.
A black man is not given a chance to get a position where he has any sort of power. He's not given a chance in society to play any part at all, where he has any authority.
There was a community spirit, a spirit of resistance side by side with poor housing, poor education, police brutality, and just trying to make an existence in very, very poor circumstances.
I lived on a flat on the second floor. Somebody threw a Molotov cocktail through the glass. The flames were coming through. I jumped 2 stories down. That was a racial attack. 5 houses, Asian and black houses, were bombed the same night.
I knew what was going on and I wanted to be part of something. So I joined the Black Unity and Freedom Party.
At weekends, Black Panther badges are proudly worn on the streets of London.
In 1967, there was a feeling that the world was going to be changed. The Black Panther movement spoke about who we were, why we were here. I thought these people are sensible. I want to join them. This was something that we had to do.
The real revolutionary proletariat ready to fight by any means necessary for the liberation of our people.
The militancy of the Panthers was very, very attractive to us. Their demands, we could identify with those demands without any problem at all. We all produced newspapers.
We would go to Brixton, stand outside the reggae shop and sell the newspapers there.
13 died, 26 were injured.
Listen, I'm ringing up to confirm about the coaches that are coming down from Huddersfield. How many are coming?
We were active in all aspects of our communities, just trying to develop and move forward the black community in this country.
there was a strict monitoring of by the police, especially after the mangrove demonstration. I've never known whether a file was kept on myself, but Darkest House certainly had a file on him.
We are faced with a serious potential, that is the overwhelming intervention of blacks on the current stage of history in Britain.
When we were going around, black people were still called coloured. What we did and what we changed, of course, was introduce the term black and being proud. We were not victims in British society, that we were out to make our own change. And you can see that today. The movement itself has given me an optimism. I don't think the detail of the Black Power movement of the 70s and early 80s is known really by and large in the population, because it isn't taught in schools, because it isn't part of the discussion in the media to any great extent. So now's our time really to say, this is what we did, this is how we did it. And if there's anything you can learn from that, then that's good enough for us.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? Peace and power, elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. It's your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. So, as you can see, that was the video from BBC, the documentary about the Black British Panther Party. And a lot of people don't know about them. Okay? Because when you hear about the Black Panther Party, right, you're just thinking they're just here in the United States. No, but they also went global. So they became very known internationally, and they had a lot of great influence on those in Britain. So the British people decided to create their own Black Power movement because they were dealing with the same stuff that we deal with here in America. Okay, so racism is global. White supremacy is global. Right? It's just not in America. So anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, watching. So I just showed you guys a preview of that video. So I have some articles and I have some books that you guys can really check out. Make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, share the channel, support the channel, etc. And again, thanks to the new subscribers that's been coming through. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the subject about the Black British Party. So I have more information that I want to pull up for you guys. Okay, so let me go ahead and get it together. You know, I like to do, I take my time getting stuff together. So let me go ahead and get it all together. Now, how did they come into existence? And how long have they been around? Well, let's go into the details of that. Let's walk through it. Now, as you can see here, and you can find, see, this is one thing I love about Wikipedia, because you can find so many information that you're unaware of, and you can also back up with sources too. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, if anybody tell you that Wikipedia is not reliable, sometimes it's not reliable, but there's information that's very intriguing that you can find on here. So let's look up information about the British Black Panthers. So they was a movement, a Black Power movement in the United Kingdom that fought for the rights of Black people and racial minorities in the country. So the BBP were inspired by the U.S. Black Panther Party, though they were unaffiliated with them. The British Panthers adopted the principles of political blackness, which included activists of Black as well as South Asian origin. The movement started in 1968 and lasted until 1973. Then it goes on to discuss about the movement reached its pinnacle with the 1970 Mangrove 9 trial. The trial involving members of the Panther movement and other black activists succeeded in fighting against police harassment of Frank Cricello's Mangrove restaurant. So it goes on to say that they work to educate the black communities and fight against racial discrimination. Members of the BBP work to educate one another in British communities about black history. The BBP used imagery and symbols already established by the Black Panther Party in the United States. They were fighting against police brutality in the UK, and they emphasized their own preparedness and willingness to confront police when necessary. The BPM also opposed the Immigration Act of 1971, defending communities against fascist violence, held civil rights demonstration, and supported Caribbeans and Palestinian liberation struggles. Black and South Asian activists were involved with the group. Now, we're going to talk about, let's talk about this for a moment. See, it's a little different in London than it is here in America, because in America, most of the people that was in the Black Panther Party, of course, was Black Panthers. And yeah, they had a few Asian, but it was more so black people, right? And it was more in the inner city. Where in London, they not only had black people, but they also had South Asian alike. So London, when it comes to black folks, most of them come from the Caribbean background. Okay? Most of them come from Caribbean background or African background. All right. But a lot of times they're Caribbean. So either they're Jamaican, Trinidadian, from the Barbados, those type of places, right? So they make up a strong population of the blacks over there in that country. And so by that being a strong diversity of black people coming from the Caribbean and migrating over to London and being over there in London, yeah, it brings that type of diversity. So, it was an issue of that because you had so many black immigrants coming through there. And of course, just like how they treat our black folks over here, they treat them the same way. They didn't want them over there. They was worried that the black folks gonna come over there and take over the job, or immigration take over the job over there. So, they was facing racism. They didn't have it easy at all. But let's continue. Since this is Black August, it says several branches existed, but the main center of the organization was Brighton, South London. The BBP also had a youth lead. Headquarters at 38 Shakespeare Road were purchased with a donation from writer John Bigger. Okay. The BBP published its own newspaper called Freedom News and other publications such as Black Power Speaks in 1968 and Black People's News Service in 1970. So Nell Kinloch, a Jamaican-born photographer, was a member of the BBP and documented their activities. So how did that come about? Well, Malcolm X was visiting the UK between 1964 and 1965. And Stokely Carmichael's address at the Dialectics of Liberation Congress at the Roundhouse in London in 1967 inspired many Britons' Black Power movement. Carmichael's speech and visit influenced writer Obi Mbuna, Obi Mbuna. Mbuna in 1966 spent time in the United States learning about the Black Power movement in the United States. Activists in Britain were also inspired by the Black Panther newspaper and watching reports on the U.S. Black Panthers on the BBC. So it goes in. It was founded in the summer of 1968 by Obi Mbuna and Darkis Howe and Linton Kwasi Johnson and Olive Morris, who were influenced by the American Black Panther Party. Other members included Athena Jones Leconte, as well as South Asian activists such as Purong Dondi and Mala seen under the banner of blackness with black as a political label for all people of color. For example, the related South Hall Black Sisters were an Asian organization. Now check this out. It says in 1969, the Race Today political magazine was founded by the Race Today Collective, becoming a leading organ for Black and Asian politics in 1970s Britain. It was founded by BM members including Derkis Hall and Farrakhan Dundee and Lunton Kwasi Johnson and Mala Singh. So the group was initially known as the British Black Power Movement, but after about a year changed its name to the British Black Panthers. Mbuna had been arrested and was convicted in December 1968 on the charge of a conspiracy to murder police officers because of an essay he wrote about resisting police violence. The arrest attracted the first media attention the group received, where they were labeled as Black racialists and extremists. And after Mbuna, Athena Jones Leconte took his place as leader of the movement. The growth of the organization was slow, but by the early 1970s, they were firmly ensconced in Britain's left political culture, and they were around 3,000 members. So they had a lot of members. And they said in March of 1970, around 300 BBP members demonstrated in front of the American embassy in Grosvenor Square to protest against the treatment of American Black Panthers. And on August the 9th of 1970, 150 protesters involved with the BBP demonstrated against the constant police raid on the Mangrove, a Black-owned restaurant in Ladbroke Grove, a West Indian neighborhood in West London. Okay. So there were 700 police involved, and violence and arrests took place. In addition to the police, a special branch Black Power desk monitored the protests. 19 members of the BBP were arrested, though later the charges against 10 were dropped. So the remaining people who became known as the Mangrove Nine chose to either defend themselves or have a radical barrister, Ian McDonald, represent them. They also requested all Black juries, citing Magna Carta as preceding. All members of the Mangrove Nine were later found not guilty by the jury. The British Black Panther movement were under extensive state surveillance by the Special Branch Black Power Desk. Top secret documents were uncovered by Robin Bunce and Paul Field whilst writing their political biography of Darkest Hall. The state sought to end the Black Power movement and imprison leading figures within the BPM. Eventually, the movement collapsed and amid infighting power struggles and kangaroo courts, according to The Guardian. Now, you want to know what's so different about this? Whereas in America, the Black Panthers, right, they dealt with informants, people that was in their organization who they thought they were members, but they were used by the government to infiltrate what was going on. And then there was those who were killed, not only by the police, but by their own as well. But for the most part, many of them got killed, and many of them got sent to life in prison. But here, that was not too much of a case. Not many of them, based on what I'm reading so far, the ones in Britain, they didn't basically get gunned down by the police, or not many of them had to serve life in prison. And I'm quite sure they had informants, but not to the extent how we have informants here in America. But you know what's interesting? In London, they're not allowed to carry guns. They're not allowed to have handguns like how we do here in our country. We're allowed to carry, we're allowed to bear arms and stuff, but they're not allowed to have that. The citizens there are not allowed to have it. So for anything, if you hear about the killing that's going on in London, as far as the people is concerned, the citizen of that country, 9 times out of 10, they will use knives before they use guns, because guns is illegal for them to have, as far as to bear arm to protect their household. It's illegal for them to have guns. I know. But, and then there's some that still find a way to gain access to them. It's a very interesting country. So London is pretty interesting. I know some people that's from London. I've interacted with them, and yeah, their laws are pretty interesting over there. I can tell you that. So from what the stories were told to me, and I'm like, wow. And they got some privilege over there that we don't have here. Some privilege, not all privilege, but a little bit of privilege over there that we don't have here. And it's like, wow. But let's go ahead and continue. Okay. So if you guys want to read more about this, you can. So let's just go ahead and skip down. So as the BBP began to fall apart in 1973, a number of women, including Beverly Bryan, Olive Morris, and Liz Obey, organized to form the Britain Black Women's Group in Britain. In recent years, Kinloch's photographs of the BPMs have been featured in its exposition and other media. In 2013, by Bristol Arts Organization, Photo Fusion conducted oral histories interviews with a number of members and held an exposition of Kinloch's photographs of the BPM curated by young people. All right, so Tate Britain's 2017 display stand firm in the England Black diaspora in London 1960 to 1970s, featured photographers including Kinloch, who captured the experiences of Black people during that time. All right, so there's a television drama miniseries called Gorilla, which came out in 2017, explores the Black British Panthers movement in the early 1970s. However, American magazine Ebony criticized the series for not representing Black women in leadership roles in the Black Power movement of the UK. There has also been some controversy over Frida Pinto's casting as a female lead, which has been defended as historically appropriate by early British Black Panther members Farouk Dundee and Nell Kinloch, noting the central role of British Asian in the movement, including Asian women such as Mala Sen, who inspired Pinto's character. Now, you know why they think that's a controversy? Because when you hear Black, right, Black anything as far as organization, and you have someone that is from another ethnic group that's running or that's one of the leaders in those organizations, yeah, it considered to be very problematic. Because it's like, well, if it's supposed to be Black, why do you have this person as a leader and not the actual person of that ethnic group, which the title is named for? So, it can bring controversy. It can bring a lot of red flags. But anyways, the noble members, as you can see, so there's the list of members who was involved. So I have one article about one of the members who helped founded the Panther Party in London. But if you guys want to look up more, you can find the references at the bottom of the page. Okay. So here's the references here. Now, let's go ahead and let's pull up another article. So here's another article that comes from the wp.nyu.edu. All right, so here's the website. And pretty much everything that I went over from Wikipedia, you can also find on here. So let's see what else they're talking about. They might be talking about a little bit more than what was put in the Wikipedia source. So let's just go down here where it says repression and downfall. So it says, as the movement became increasingly difficult to fund, the BBPM expected members to contribute, which sometimes strained members' economic stability and family relationships. Further, over time, ideological shifts fractured the movement. By 1972, a Trotsky alignment had taken hold. Some members who had grown frustrated with this approach, especially by the central core, left the BBPM for other organizations. Another ideological tension growing in the movement was based on the relationship between race and class. This friction was prominent from the group's inception and hindered the broad-based coalition that the BBPM sought. And it says, as early as late 1970s, some working class members came to believe that the BBPM's ideological focus often distracted from a necessary grassroots organizing. Some members in the North and West London BBPM branches left to form the Black Liberation Front early in 1971. Frustrated with the rigid Marxist-Leninist approach of the BBPM, the BLF took on Black working class concerns. Members within the BBPM, others thought the movement had not considered women's issues enough in its quest for Black people's liberation. So women in the movement had founded a sister forum in 1972 to address the intersectional nature of Black women's oppression. However, many believed this was still not enough, and in 1973, the organization divided into different factions focused on different aspects of Black liberation, and the BBPM ended shortly thereafter. So on March 15, 1972, a bonfire or firebomb sealed the movement's demise. The fire had destroyed Unity Center and its library of Black history, politics, and literature. Although no arrests were made, the Panthers believed that members of the National Front had thrown the firebomb 150 in June of 1973. The members who remained after the BLF split and the fire at Unity Center changed the organization name to the Black Workers Movement. Johnson reflected, we moved from the ideology of Black power to a more Black working class ideology. So pretty much similar to what was going on, except that, things got a little extreme. Someone firebombed one of their buildings, and that's pretty much was like, that's a done deal. We're going to go on to the next phase because this ain't working anymore. And that usually happens where there's a clash amongst members in organization to where they're branching out and create their own organization and have their own ideology which will fit their narratives. And then when things clash in their organization, then you got some more members leaving and create their own. So it usually turned out to be that way. It's always that disagreement, it's always the envy, it's always the jealousy, and it's always differences of point of views which brings about conflict, which people cannot focus on the common goal that need to be focused on. Okay, so if you guys want to check this article out right here, again, you can find it. It's called the Black Panther Party History and Theory, United Kingdom, and it's under wp.nyu.edu. So again, these are sources to back up the information that I used on Wikipedia. All right. Now, we're going to look at Beverly Bryan, the British Black Panther who inspired a generation of women. So let's check this out. Let's go over this. So Beverly Bryant, the British Black Panther who inspired a generation of women. So after her friend Olive Morris was assaulted by police in 1969, Bryant joined her in the civil rights group. Then she decolonized her classroom and contributed to a groundbreaking book. All right, so this is the lady right here today, as you can see. And this article came out in January 28th of 2021. All right. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but let's just look at the first 3 paragraphs. Okay, well, let's go down to here. So it says, in the mid 1960s, Beverly Bryant was a perfect at Lavender Hill Secondary Modern in South London. One of her responsibilities was to stand at the school's gates and scribble down the name of any student who was late. One such girl was Olive Morris, who would become one of the country's leading anti-racism activists. Bryant, meanwhile, would follow in the youngest girl's footsteps, becoming a British Black Panther, a founding member of the Bristol Black Women's Group, and in 1985, the co-author of the seminal book, The Heart of the Race, Black Women's Lives in Britain, which helped educate generations of women about the struggles and triumphs of Black women in Britain. Okay, so she was always very fierce, Brian says, over a video call from her home in Jamaica of her friend Morris, who died in 1979. She was always a strong person, a strong personality. Brian and Morris had much in common. Both were born in Jamaica before immigrating to London as young children, and they quickly became friends who reminisced with a laugh about their early dispute. So after finishing school, Brian went to teacher training college in Killy, Staffordshire. By the time she saw Morris again, her friend's life had changed. So in November of 1969, 17-year-old Morris came to the defense of a Nigerian diplomat, Clement, as he was being arrested and accused of stealing his own Mercedes. Morris was brutally assaulted. When Morris saw Bryant in 1970, she told her she had a plan to join the British Black Panthers. The way Olive was tackling it was by being part of an organization that was campaigning against police harassment, says Bryant, and I joined too. Goes on to say this Black Panther Power organization was unaffiliated with its U.S. counterpart, but had the same principal aim to serve its local community. Brian spent her free time running one of the group's Saturday schools, offering supplementary lessons in math and English to combat the racial discrimination rife in education and to teach children Black history. The Panthers would pick up the children from their homes to ensure the school also functioned as a free child care service. But just as vital as the political side of the movement were the parties and gatherings, the Panthers weren't just about the politics, but also young people interacting, says Brian. We found purpose in the work we were doing, but we also found pleasure. So the group Pete's came in 1970 with the trial of the Mangrove Nine, a group of Black activists who were charged with incitement to riot after a peaceful protest against police racism. After 55 days at the Old Bailey, all 9 were acquitted. The trial made history by generating the first judicial acknowledgement of racial prejudice within the Metropolitan Police. The Black Panthers Barbara Beese and Athena Jones LeConte were among the 9. So just to give that story about this sister here who brought about inspiration, and the name of the book that she written is called The Heart of the Race, Black Women's Lives in Britain, which I would look that up myself personally because I'm very intrigued and I want to know more about this. So if you guys want to check out her book, it's called The Heart of the Race. I got it highlighted right here, so check it out. Just write it down, etc. Because that's something I want to look into. All right, but so that's that information. Let's see. Let's see what else I have. And then the other one's called the Black Panthers in London, 1967 to 1972. A diasporic struggle navigates the Black Atlantic. So this was written by Anne Marie Angelo. Okay. So I want to show you guys real quick. Ooh, that's the wrong one. Hold on. All right, so here's another article. So the Black Panther Party, or the Black Panthers in London, 1967, 1972. A diasporic struggle navigates the Black Atlantic, and Marie Angelo. So it says the history of Black power in Britain is the history of the shit class trying to organize themselves. Obi Mbuna, destroy this temple. I like that quote. The history of Black power in Britain is the history of the shit class trying to organize themselves. And we all can relate to that in a way. So she basically goes into the details, etc. Basically everything that was talked about in the articles, in the previous articles. So just to kind of like give a little background, let's just look at the first paragraph. So basically it says on March the 2nd of 1970, roughly 100 people protested outside the United States Embassy in Grosvenor Square, London, in support of the U.S. Black Panther founder, Bobby Seale, who was on trial for murder in New Haven, Connecticut. They chanted "Free Bobby" and carried posters proclaiming free Bobby Seale, and you can kill a revolutionary, but not a revolution. Demonstrator Tony Thomas waved a large red and yellow flag emblazoned with a Black Panther symbol, claiming that their joint actions amounted to a general threat to passerby. London police arrested 16 of the protesters that day. Police charged these 3 women and 13 men with threatening and assaulting police officers, disturbing a filer entitled "The Definition of Black Power," intended to incite a breach of the peace and willful damage to a police raincoat. At trial, the judge dropped the raincoat charge and found 5 of the accused, named as Black Panther defendants, guilty of remaining charges. All right, so go down. Here's the symbol chanted and demanded of the U.S. Black Panther Party cross the Atlantic, stimulating shared racial and class identification across national borders and intersecting with these Afro-Britons who identify themselves as Britain Black Power movement from 1967 to 1968, as the British Black Panther movement from 1968 to 1972, as the first Black Panther movement to form independently outside the United States. The British Panthers took their ideological inspiration from the U.S. Panthers. Okay, the UK Panthers appropriated the U.S. Panthers' revolutionary aesthetic as a model for protest, necessary violence, and engaging with the states. The definition of Black Power filer that protesters had distributed revealed that its author thought their plight was part of the international anti-capitalist struggle, asserting that the history of the oppressed people of Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean and the Americas over the last 400 years has demonstrated that the world has been divided into 2 irreconcilable camps. A handful of Western capitalist imperialist nations have mercilessly oppressed and exploited the broad tolling masses and ravaged the material wealth of 3 continents. That the well-being of the imperialist nations rests on the hundreds of millions of broken backs in Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas is the reality. That's pretty deep. Then it talks about Black Power. The authors maintain, provide the political slogan which gives expression to pent up fury that rages in the oppressed people of the world. The authors claim that a long history of oppression had forced them to take up Black power as a matter of necessity. The filer and concomitant protest would be the first in a series of altercation between the BBM and the City of London Metropolitan Police in 1970. It says the literature on internationalism and the US BBP has centered on the party's influence on Pan-Africanist movements, revolutionary movements, and anti-colonial struggle. Kathleen Cleaver charts the development of the first international wing of the Black Panther Party in Algeria in 1969. John McCarthy demonstrated the direct influence of the US BPP on the vanguard nationalists and the socialist parties in the Bahamas. Ruth Rayton traced the relationship between Panther leader Elder Cleaver and the Castro regime, paying particular attention to Cuba as a haven for revolutionary Black exile from the United States. Most recently, Jeffrey O.G. Ogbar shows how the party influenced the Young Lords, a Puerto Rican nationalist group that was active in the United States from 1966 until 1972. And then that's all I have. So I'm just going to let you guys look that up for yourself if you get interested. And the title is The Black Panthers in London from 1967, 1972. A diasporic struggle navigates the Black Atlantic, and Marie Angelo. Okay. So you guys can look that up if you guys want to learn more. So just to give my last thoughts on this before I close it out. The Black Panther has brought about great influence to many of people of color, right? Especially Black people internationally. So because of its international influence, a lot of people have shown a lot of respect for the organization. They really have. And as you can see, there was a lot of support system then. So when I hear, and I hate bringing these groups up, but when I hear FBA and ADOS say some shit like, well, what have these people in the Caribbean and the people in London and people in Africa, etc., what have they done for us? What kind of support they have shown? Well, they have shown a lot of support. They've shown a lot of support to Black movements here in America. Yes, it's true that Black folks in America have brought influence to others internationally, but also those internationally have brought influence to us as well. And so as you can see, that was the coalition, that was the work taking place. So when Bobby Seale got locked up, those brothers and sisters in London was protesting as well. They stood up. They said, free Bobby Seale. Those brothers and sisters made it their business to get out there and protest. Because it wasn't just affecting the people here in the United States. It was affecting Blacks globally. So when you hear about what's going on with Black people in the Atlantic or in the Western Hemisphere, it affects other Black folks. And y'all think that they don't pay attention, right? You don't think these people be watching? They do. They pay attention to what's going on. Now, there are those who are arrogant and they just doesn't care, but there are those who are actually watching. They actually keep up. They keep up with a lot of things that's going on, and they show solidarity to the best of their ability while they in the midst of their own crisis. They show solidarity, and that's what it's about. And that's one of the reasons why I support Pan-African ideology, because it's about showing a form of solidarity. It's about showing support, even if you can't step out of your own country and financially contribute or just come and try to rescue somebody. Just showing that you watching and you acknowledge the groups here in America or anywhere else, it just showed that you really have some form of consideration. You know, but you don't know who is really supporting you because you're too blind and you're not paying attention. And you're so fixated, you're so stuck on who ain't supporting you. So when you focus on who ain't supporting you, then you forget about those who are supporting you. You know, and we cannot sit here and continuously allow bullshit to bring more dichotomy. Because I'm gonna be honest, Black folks here in America, if they keep up with this BS, they keeping up with as far as these different organizations, they're going to make it hard for themselves. I'm just going to keep it real. You're going to make it hard for yourself. You're going to make it hard for other Black people to want to show solidarity and want to be able to give some type of support. You're going to make it hard because you want alliance, right? But you pushing away those who are trying because of the arrogance. So all the bickering back and forth about who, and what, that is going to create the problem. It's going to make it hard. So now these people look at you and say, oh, that's how you feel. Oh, okay. Well, since you feel that way, well, we gonna feel this way. And we gonna not fuck with y'all. I mean, since y'all had this attitude. And I'm gonna be honest, we was doing okay as Black folks collectively before all this ADOS and B1s and FBA came about. But when those groups came into existence, that created more confusion. And it created more problem amongst them because, as you can see, they all can't even get along with each other. Why do that? Why create more problems? And this is one of the reasons why I say I'm done with those type of groups. This is why I don't even try to even wrap my head around to even have conversation with people that's in these particular organizations, because they already got it set in their mind. They use a lot of confirmation bias. They're not going to take the time out to actually study. They just want somebody to tell them something. And it's so easy when somebody tell you anything because they use you and they get over you that way because they know that you're not going to do your own homework. You're not going to do the research. You're going to go by hearsay. You're going to go by what hearsay. And when you go by hearsay, it's so easy to be engulfed and trapped into a bunch of foolishness. It's so easy to get caught up in somebody's cult ways because you are gullible and you refuse to really think outside the box. One day, we're going to have to do a subject about Messiah's complex, because I think we need to talk about the Messiah's complex that we're suffering as Black people collectively, because that's what we're looking for. I mean, it's one thing to get inspiration. It's one thing to look for role models or people who set examples. But when you're looking for a savior, then that becomes a problem. That becomes a problem because the people that you look up to save you, it's not going to really save you. They have other agendas. But that's enough of my rant. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Make sure you support the channel. And also check out my other videos that's on here. And until next time, y'all take it easy on yourself. Be safe. Be careful. And peace and power elevation be to all of you. And it's your girl Tiffany. And I'm logging off saying deuces. All right. And I hope y'all enjoy this video. And for those of you that's just coming through, watch it from the very beginning. And then you go ahead and share the video. Check out all the other videos that I have done. All right. And just go from there. And if you want to subscribe to the channel ain't going nowhere. The channel is here. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you support your girl. All right. All right, then, y'all take it easy.